This woman wasn't staying safely inside the basket. Instead, she was climbing a rope at 20,000 feet in the air. Suddenly, she slipped, nearly falling. But even that didn't stop her. She glanced at her fingers, dripping with blood, gritted her teeth, and lunged upward, climbing straight onto an even more dangerous rope ladder. The rope ladder swayed wildly, and the woman was barely hanging on. At this altitude, even the slightest mistake could send her plummeting to her death. After an unknown amount of time, she finally made it to the edge of the hot air balloon, but the real danger was just beginning. At this height, the moisture in the air had turned to frost, coating the balloon in layer after layer of ice. Even the ropes securing the balloon were frozen solid, like sticks of ice. It wasn't long before her hands were severely frostbitten, forcing her to use her wrists to continue climbing. She reached out to grab a rope on her right, but it was just out of reach. Her hand slipped, and half her body dangled over the void, nearly falling into the sky below. The lack of oxygen at high altitude made her head spin. Dangling upside down, her eyes began to glaze over. She was exhausted, and for a brief moment, she thought it wouldn't be so bad to just hang there forever. But then she looked up and saw her teammate in the basket. That snapped her out of it. This wasn't the time to give up. She steadied her breath, reached out for the rope in front of her, and ignored the searing pain in her fingers. Slowly, hand over hand, she pulled herself back onto the ladder. To avoid another fall, she tied the rope tightly around her waist, bit down, and cinched it hard. Then, braving the minus 50-degree cold, she continued climbing with everything she had. 10 miles above the earth, the view was breathtaking. The once massive hot air balloon now looked like a fragile little bubble, ready to pop and fall at any moment. It was an awe-inspiring sight, but she didn't dare look for long. The balloon was still rising. If she didn't open the release valve soon, she and her teammate would keep climbing, all the way into the sky. After what felt like forever, she finally reached the very top of the balloon. Her hair and face were crusted with frost and her skin ached from the cold. But this was life or death. There was no room for hesitation. She climbed all the way to the valve and tried to open it by hand, pounding on it again and again. It wouldn't budge. She paused briefly, trying not to look down, and slowly stood up. The top of the balloon was slick with ice, and even the slightest gust could send her flying off into the abyss. She steadied herself, then summoned all her strength and kicked at the valve, once, twice, and finally, a burst of hot air erupted. It nearly knocked her off, but it cracked the valve open. She quickly jammed her foot into the gap to hold it open, wedging her shoe in place. Then she crouched down, pulled out a knife, and cut her shoelace. By the time it was all over, the oxygen deprivation, the brutal cold, and the relentless climbing had taken their toll. Her consciousness faded. She collapsed on the balloon, completely passed out, but her face looked peaceful, even smiling slightly, as if she were dreaming about something happy. Except this wasn't a dream. She was still 20,000 feet in the sky.